Welcome to Hurrdat Sports Live.
I just knew at a young age I wanted to be a broadcaster, and I've been very, very fortunate and blessed to have some wonderful opportunities.
Launches the throw down toward the goal line, going up. Touchdown! Jordan Westerkamp! Nebraska wins the game!
I've told people all summer, don't bet against me. I'll be in that booth on the 31st because it's been part of my life, all of my life. It's all I know. It's what gets me going every day.
Students are pouring onto the field. The second time they've done that this year. They did it after the Colorado game. And now Nebraska knows they are bowl eligible. The 8-year excruciating drought is behind us.
The first night they wore that hat, Jackson Brockett throws a no-hitter. Man.
Jackson Brockett has the first 9-inning no-hitter for the Nebraska Cornhuskers since 1954.
Brett ready to deliver the first pitch. Breaking ball, that's looped in left field. Gabe Swanson is there. He squeezes it, and your Huskers are Big Ten champions. After losing game one Tuesday night, they come back and win 5 straight and capture the Big Ten tournament for the first time since joining the league.
My wife's been amazing. My daughters have been great. Work has been phenomenal. People like Jessica and Ben. I thank them, but that's not enough. They deserve more. They deserve more than that. But boy, you're catching me here. Thank you to all those people across the state who have sent letters, and I know the prayers are there. I can feel them.
Good morning. Welcome into Hurrdat Sports Live. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla, presented by Centris Federal Credit Union. Stay safe out there this morning. It's getting a little dicey out there on the roads. DB, how we doing this morning?
We're okay. We are
hanging in there.
Yeah. I remembered how to drive this morning, so that was new.
I was you hunkered down this weekend a little bit.
Yeah. I didn't start my truck one time.
Yeah, it's a good weekend for it.
Yeah, it's interesting. And just kind of listening back and talk to, just throughout the course of the week and going back and forth with Sharpie. And, Ben said on Monday, he's like, hey, let me get down and talk to Greg before I leave for Arizona. And then Jess texts Tuesday morning, and that's when I told you, I'm like, weekend may be tough, right?
Yeah.
Just getting to the weekend. And
yeah.
But then there's this part of me that's like, he's kind of a fighter. He's fought forever. And I told Jess and Ben, I said, man, I'm like, I got to get down there to say thank you. I said, but I'm kind of afraid.
Sure.
Like, this is real time for us. I'm kind of afraid. I don't want to overstep my bounds. And, but he's just timely. When other people would forget, or not forget, like there would be oversights or references, or he felt like I was left out. Like he would always include me.
Mm-hmm.
He's very encouraging. Television is vastly different than radio.
Yeah.
Like it's extremely different. And that's why I have such an affinity for guys like Kevin, who can paint the picture either way.
Yeah.
And Jess said, and she's not usually like, her glass stays half full.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and she said, well, just telling you, if there's anything you want to say, better get it all out.
Mm.
So Tuesday, I just dumped. It was whatever, right? And I wanted him to know that for all the things that people think that I've accomplished, or whatever people think about my broadcasting career, that the two most influential people in my career arc happened almost 20 years apart. So there's Kevin, early 2000s, just coaching and loving me up and critiquing and coaching and, setting me up. And then the transition with Greg.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's really, really, really hard. And the things that I thought about was, and I told him this from day one, because you have to imagine me kind of walking in as this all of the sudden, and I mean all of the
Yeah, it's
sudden,
mid-season, right? It's like midweek.
handpicked guy.
Yeah.
And I knew he had a fantastic relationship with Matt. And I'm kind of this outsider. And it's had to be tough, I would think.
Yeah.
He sat me down and just like plowed through it. He's like, "Hey, this is right up your alley. We're going to transition. We're professionals here. Let's have some fun."
Yeah.
And there was significantly more than that, but at the end of the day, and one of the things that I said the other day to him is, people use this a lot. Like, I didn't really have I didn't have like the wherewithal, and I knew, I mean, a lot of people knew this was coming, right? And so maybe people had some stuff in the queue. Maybe, it was just everybody grieves differently.
Mm-hmm.
And I just couldn't muster anything on social media.
Sure.
Just wasn't my deal. And I was talking to Coach Bull about it, and Kevin, and talked to Rizak. He'd already sent me this book just because of the run that I've been on the last, handful of years.
Mm-hmm.
That's called Permission to Grieve. And so you think you know until you really know, and then you start going through social media, and honestly, like some guilt started to creep in. Because I think, and maybe I think one of the connections that I have and that we've been able to have with listeners is sometimes we'll say some things, or we'll admit some things that I think other people have been thinking and wanting to say. They just don't, but we do, because I mean, for me, I've kind of been at the bottom, so shame isn't really a thing for me, right?
Yeah.
You fight gatekeeping death and people's passings.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it's natural or unnatural, or people go through it, but people talk about, you want to see the worst, and people, experience a few weddings and funerals.
100%. Yeah.
So I went through that a little bit early, and kind of settled down. And the one thing that I kept coming back to, that those that I think like really knew him, the Davisons, the Roars, the Ben McLaughlins, the Lane Grindles. And Ben didn't say anything. And in deals like this with Greg, I always followed Ben's lead.
Sure.
Always.
Sure. Because they're very close.
Yes.
Yeah.
So kind of how Ben handled it is what I would try to do.
Yeah.
I didn't say anything, and I literally just followed B-Mac. If he made something okay, then it was fine with me. If Ben was upset with something, then I would be upset with something. Like, that's just what I would do. And the word that I kept coming back to was his humility. Because that's a word that kept kind of was reoccurring with those guys when they would speak about him. And I'm telling you, Ravi, that had to be, professionalism is up there.
Sure.
But his humility was like, he's kind of meek, you know, so he had like this quiet strength. And I think it was his humility that that I talked to him. You know, I was talking about modeled behavior. Like he's the quintessential person for modeled behavior. How to go about doing your job. And he's just incredible. I mean, sometimes he was a babysitter. Sometimes he was, like, he literally would defer. You know, he'd walk into rooms and stuff. I remember we were at a spring practice, and, you know, he had his arm in a sling. And, you know, I looked at him, and he came over and we talked, and I said, "Hey, you know me really well now. Do I or don't I say anything? Do I ask?" And he shook his head, no, and said, "We'll talk later." So you can know what's what, and you can know something's coming, and it's just never, you just don't get enough practice reps.
Yeah.
You don't. And so the thing I think that I struggle with as somebody that's super competitive is at some point you'd think that I would get better. Just practice.
Yeah.
Because that's what I'm used to. It doesn't work like that.
No.
So, you know, there's so many like really cool things, and there was this part of me, you know, I'd pray every day, just get to the 22nd, just get to the wedding, just get to the wedding.
Yep.
That's all I wanted for him, because that's all he wanted. And so, you know, to the girls, and I didn't know him very well. I'd only seen him a couple times in passing, and in particular to like Amy, just like the quiet strength. I mean, people are going to rally, and, you know, she's super strong. So, you know, there's that portion that I want them to be okay.
Yeah.
For next week, and such a special day. And, you know, I lost my dad 8 days before I got married.
I was going to say, this dynamic strikes strangely close to you.
It's incredible.
Like, weirdly.
It's incredible. And, you know, I'm not in the advice giving business, because they certainly didn't ask. And as hard as it's going to be to be other centered in that moment, and just be like, what would Dad want?
Yeah.
Is paramount. And they'll get through it.
Yeah.
And just, it is really, really strange. And I guess at the end of the day, one of the things that's kind of my favorite is there's this part of me because I mean the voice of the Huskers is it's a thing.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
It's a thing.
Yeah.
And there was this part of me down the stretch, like the last probably year. I just was cheering for a bowl game and a good season.
Yeah.
So somebody that was that quality of a person and that good at his job could experience something really, really good because he had seen it all.
Yeah.
Since he got here. I mean, seen it all. 6, 7, 8 to now with football and baseball. He'd seen it all.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted him. I was just cheering for peace. Just peace. And I just truly a job super well done for a good and faithful servant. The Lane Grindles, the Matt Davisons, the Ben McLaughlins, his family. It's tough.
Yeah.
And he's one of those guys that you're a good, like, the accolades fit. I mean, we took in a Wildcat like our very own. Didn't bat an eye at it. Nebraska fans can be tough.
Yeah. Especially outsiders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They guard.
Yeah.
They
Very protective.
They will guard their yard.
Yeah.
And they took in Sharpie like a son of a gun. And that's just how you know. Just a good-natured.
Yeah.
Light up the room better than you. You know how many times he would like critique tape and take notes. And I told you about the whole time I thought I would listen to his opens. I'm like, how does he do this?
Yeah.
We'd do it every week. And he was seamless at it. And it just, I don't know, the modeled behavior is, it's how you treat coworkers. It's how you treat people. It's how you do your job. He loved his family. He was something else. And now he gets to have all the broadcasts and calls that he wants. And there's a real one, man. And all the irony of the scuttlebutt of, what the Super Bowl performance and upper and lowercase A's and all that nonsense that we sang in unison about. I think the best note in the world right now has got to be a G sharp. Right? All about G sharp.
Yeah, it's obviously you and I have very different perspectives on Greg just because I didn't know him personally. And you did and got to work with him and got to be close with him. I do think there's, the only thing I really put on social media was one of the things that I love about sports is, despite, I think I only met Greg a couple times, and the only time I talked to him really was on the show when he would join us. But it gives this opportunity to make people you've either never met before or are pretty much strangers to you feel like either part of your family or really good friends. And I think that's the thing that endeared us to Greg so much was, if you love Nebraska sports, you spend a lot of time with this man, even if you didn't know him, right? Mm-hmm. Spend your Saturday in the fall. You spend your baseball games. I love listening to baseball on the radio. Like, it's a very radio-friendly voice or a very radio-friendly sport. So, I would find myself, I probably listened to more Greg Sharp radio, baseball radio calls than football, ironically enough. But you get this sense that you know him and that he's a friend. And it's a it's really one of the beautiful things about sports.
That's a skill.
Is the ability to bring people together that are total strangers and they feel like friends. And Greg was so good at that and it sounds like he was really good at that in person too.
Mm-hmm.
I always got this dynamic of your guys' little crew. Like he always felt like the dad, and like that he always wanted what was best for you guys. Cause you would tell me these stories and give me a little behind the scenes of how your guys' interactions were and how he's trying to walk you through the stadium in Minnesota. And it takes 20 minutes to figure out you guys are in the two different places.
Even when we would we'd go try to find breakfast. Ben and I sometimes had breakfast together if we ate out of the hotel, but we'd always use the app and walk.
Yeah.
And even his delivery on how the difference between using, Google Maps walking versus driving was, you take a deep breath, give it a second, wait till the arrow points the direction the way you want it to go. But I think he was kind of serious, right?
Yeah.
That's how he would be with like his kids.
Yeah. Yep.
It's like, oh, this thing, I just hurry up and go.
Just take a deep breath.
It's like, well, you don't walk as fast as you drive, so it takes a second to, it's just who he was.
But there was always this sense of like this fatherly, when he like take you guys under his wing and kind of help you out, and especially you coming in when you did. You probably identified with it a little bit because that's how he came in, right?
Yep.
Comes in mid-season in 2007. He probably knew how hard it was for you to make that transition because he'd done the same thing. And there's this, you could just tell this empathy from him where he wanted what
he's a caregiver.
He wanted what was best.
He's a definite caregiver.
He wanted what was best for you. He wanted what was best for the guys on the field. He wanted what was best for Jess and Ben and everybody else on the crew. And it's crazy that you can pick all of that up just through listening to him call a sporting event.
Yeah.
And I think that speaks to kind of his character and to the man he was. And obviously it's a huge loss for the state. I know.
I remember him just giving me permission to cheer through a broadcast.
Yeah.
A little stuff.
Yeah.
He's like, let it rip. I'm like, can we high five? I mean, is there anything more DB than that? And he's like, yeah, I high five.
There you go.
And he, there are just so many of those cool little things. Hey, I can only open my side of the window if you want. I know you didn't bring a coat.
Mm-hmm.
And he would make it seem like it's okay.
Yeah.
Right? We're Purdue. Then the next time it was a cold weather game, he'd send me a message and he'd say, hey, no, bring a coat. And in my head, I was like, but I thought it was okay. You know what I mean? But his nature is get you through it.
Yeah.
Let's
do better next time.
Let's do better though.
Yeah. It's like, it was okay this time.
Yeah.
Next time, bring coat.
It's just little cool stuff like that, man.
Well, that's the one and only Greg Sharp. Obviously beloved, not just by those who knew him, but those who enjoyed his incredible work as well. We'll be back with more Hurrdat Sports Live coming up next.
will be back. We will be back. Welcome to Hurrdat Sports Live.
You've got a chance to sit down in depth with guys like Coach White and kind of put the little snippets we hear in pressers, like the practical application. You got him long form. What is it about his delivery that makes it so captivating? Because he's obviously a heck of a teacher, but every time he talks, it's almost like, you know, E.F. Hutton, right? You just kind of lean in a little more. I don't know if it's his delivery or what. You've done this a long time again, right? Like, what is it about his delivery style?
Well, first of all, Damon does have a big man crush on Coach White. You need to get that out there.
Yeah.
I mean, the flowers to the office here, they were a little over the top.
Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Live here at the Pillar Exterior Stage. That's DB. I'm Ravi, Lulla. Be careful out there this morning. It's a little dicey. If you're heading
it really
work.
is. I don't think you're just saying that.
No, I'm really not. I took it nice and slow. It took me about 30 minutes to get in today, which is about 3 times longer than normal.
Did it really?
Yeah. Well, I also took the long way because I didn't want to get on the interstate. So, because last time it was not great. So I took the long way, which added, probably 8 minutes anyway. So it wasn't entirely weather related, but just be careful out there. Make sure you're locked in, got those eyes focused straight ahead, and make sure you're paying close attention. Keep those safe speeds and following distances. You got to make sure everybody gets where they're going safely. This message from the NDOT Highway Safety Office. But, it was not great coming in. Bad timing on the snowing for sure. They could stop doing it right when we're trying to get to work. That'd be ideal.
It's interesting, too, because, my neighbors were pretty cool the first time around. That lasted only 2 days.
Okay.
We're back out there in them streets. So it's just I hope it changes because snowplows have to come. Not just us in the neighborhood, but like snowplows have to come by. And,
yeah.
I mean, you have a recycling bin and a trash bin, and then getting out of the driveway it can be tricky.
A little tight spaces there,
especially when you have to turn immediately.
Tight quarters.
Right? So margin for error is very, very small. So hopefully somebody will get the memo.
Yeah, let's just try and be considerate of what's going on around us. It's
self-awareness.
It's a good day for that. Self-awareness it's always a good day for self-awareness.
Man, who it took a long time to realize a little self-awareness?
Who's that?
Nebraska basketball.
Oh, yeah, it did.
Oh, I was so listen, I told my man Aaron, I'm like, and that's like probably literally, I was already in a mood. I mean, 48 hours of being a baby, right? But, I mean, steaming at the way Nebraska came out.
Unbelievable. Just unbelievable.
It's 36-21 at the half. I have the split screen, and Creighton is like, I can't decide if I want to watch to see if Colt comes back but because that was right about the time.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I have him on in both rooms, and because sometimes I'll walk. So I'm like, I don't want to miss anything.
Yeah. You pace a little bit.
Yeah. And I'm like, man, he's been able the last couple of years, by he, I mean Coach Mack, not have the key injury late.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, you always used to get the February injury.
Yep.
And at that time, Nebraska's moping around the court, and I'm thinking, well, I mean, what is really going on? Like,
yeah,
when it rains, it pours.
Really gonna go 0 for 2 today?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the manner in which it was what I felt like it was gonna happen too.
Yeah, it felt like Creighton loses their best player and Nebraska doesn't even show up.
I was like, yeah, for sure ain't eating today either. That's like, this is just not gonna be in the cards. So watching them and then kind of systematically come back.
Yeah.
And been able to get some stops, and the way that they did it, you just, I said this, and it was kind of in passing, and I know we get a, ton of downloads or whatever for Betting Bites, but I think I saved this for Betting Bites, where it was on the heels where I had made my stand about Coach Hoiberg, just saying he's a good coach and leave it at that. But between me and you, I was like,
I really need you to win tomorrow.
Please beat Illinois and don't lose to Oregon. Like, that's what I was really doing. I was like, "Ooh, don't make me look bad. Don't make me look bad." They had the opportunity to help Washington out on the road when Washington jumped on them, and they didn't give in. I'm like, poorly coached teams
don't do that.
Yeah, they'd give in.
Yeah, they cave. And to be fair, we've seen Nebraska teams cave.
Yeah, they would have let that. They would have let that happen.
Yeah.
And then you saw again yesterday in a game that you had to win. You found a way. Well-coached teams, that's what they do.
Mm-hmm.
They do. And he did something else I thought was interesting.
Fred?
Yeah. Remember what I tell you what I liked about his ability to tinker with the lineups? I'm sure he tinkles at home. I mean, it's kind of healthy.
Maybe halftime.
Let's wait on that. Where he'll mess with.
Yeah, he's not afraid to mess with lineups.
Crazy. All of a sudden, G2 gets off the bench, and you're like,
oh, okay.
But he's not going to stand idly by.
No, he's not just going to let it happen.
You know what I mean? So I'm like, okay, there he goes again. I know he's going to push any button he can to get a dub out of this thing.
Yeah, it was.
Now Gavin didn't help him out any, but
no. But I like that he's willing to try. I really do. Like that.
I'm a big fan of that.
I am too. And again, we talked about this a little last week. It's one of the things that drives me crazy about Mac a little bit, is that he's not always as willing to try things as I'd like him to be. Like when Kalkbrenner goes out yesterday, because this isn't just a Fedor thing. I know everybody thinks it's just a Fedor thing, right? But when Kalkbrenner goes out yesterday, like Frederick King wasn't giving you real good minutes, right? Like he just wasn't.
How about the second foul, where he literally right arm around the chest and then put his.
It's like, what'd I do? Although to be fair, yesterday that might have gotten.
And how about Fanta? He's like, that's a foul,
right? To be fair though, yesterday that they might have been able to get away with it.
It's wild,
but like obviously, like Fred wasn't giving you great minutes, and I'm not trying to hate on Fred, but like he just wasn't. Sometimes he does, sometimes he doesn't. I would have loved to have seen maybe try a couple other things. Now I know Fred only played about 10 minutes. So you're like, oh, well, you don't have a ton of time, Ravi, whatever. But like Fred's been there for 3 years. He's good in like short spurts, right? If you think you're going to have to play him extended minutes, I would love it if you tried something else. Maybe you play Isaac Trout as a 5. He's 6'10", right? Maybe you don't like him defensively. Maybe you try Jason Green as a small ball 5. You used to do that all the time with a Christian Bishop. Pretty similar body types and skill sets between those two guys. Like maybe you haven't practiced it. Okay. But that's also kind of part of my beef. Like I would like them to be able to roll out other things because you are so dependent on Ryan Kalkbrenner being healthy and being effective, right? You're so dependent. Like the other night against UConn, I don't know if that was game plan or if it, people said he was sick. That's fine. But if he's sick and can't give you what he normally does, you have to have a changeup. Like you have to have a plan B for your offense. And it can't just be, well, I hope Ashworth and Neal bail us out because that's not a good enough plan B. Like, I need other options.
Where'd you settle in on the shot selection?
Terrible. I think the shot selection has been really bad the last 2 games. I think it's been really bad.
I asked you, and I think this is because it's one of the things, and I hate that I got to be better at this. I'd like to talk about one team at one time and another team at another time, but I feel like there's some parallels here.
Yeah, for sure.
The one of the things that I liked at Washington and at Evanston, Nebraska didn't panic with their shot selection.
No.
Which I like. That's a sign for me. I'm always looking for monumental or incremental, not monumental, incremental progress.
Yeah.
They didn't get out of pocket with the shot selection when it would have been easy.
And they've at times been a bad shot selection team.
And listen,
right?
And the one of the more questionable shots after the turnover was the Seagens 3, and it goes in, and you're like,
I guess we'll take it.
We'll take it, but
don't do that again. But we'll take it.
So my point in saying that is as close as it was to like an ill-advised shot, fudge, you could make the case.
Yeah,
that was kind of the catalyst.
But on the other hand, right, you look at the way Creighton went about things, a much closer game, much less reason to panic, right? And you see, especially after Kalkbrenner went out, you see Ashworth hoisting shots. You see Jemiah Neal hoisting a lot of heavy dribble, late shot clock 3-pointers. You see guys trying to like get threes off super early. And that is where I'm going to come at you with the Fedor thing. Because if you're without one of your main scorers, you have to give yourself more options. Fedor gives you more options, right? And here's the thing.
I just don't know who he was going to stay in front of on the court yesterday.
It's not like anybody else did either.
Those are some tough matchups.
Who's Ashworth and Neal staying in front of? Nobody. Who'd Green stay in front of? Nobody. If I can't stay in front of anybody anyway, I might as well get the guy that can score a bucket.
And if anybody thinks there isn't any difference in how conferences are officiated,
yeah, watch both those games.
And then turn around and go watch an ACC game.
Yes.
You can't blow on a guy in the ACC.
I do want to get to a little officiating coming up next on Hurrdat Sports Live.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. will be back.
You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Live.
Snap, set, throw, passes intercepted, touchdown Nebraska. Pick six, Tommy Hill. Pick six, Big Red.
I can see it happening. Bullock takes away the slant. Sanders has to hold it. Pick six. Give me all of it.
They are bunched up around the line of scrimmage. Hand off to Dowdell off the right side. Touchdown, Nebraska. Dante Dowdell finds pay dirt. 6-0 Big Red. Let those balloons loose.
Wrapping up hour number one here on Hurrdat Sports Live. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. We're here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. Real quick before we dive back in, want to give you a reminder. This is our first all-digital show starting here today. So you can find us on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, on hurrdatsports.com/live. We will have a one-stop shop, all-inclusive app coming soon in the next few weeks here. You'll be able to pair up with your car's YouTube just the same way you would a podcast. And, of course, you can still find us wherever you get your podcasts as well. I know there's been some questions about how to get us now that we are no longer over the terrestrial radio, but that is how you find us. And honestly, it's how 95% of you found us anyway. But if you were part of our radio crew, who we dearly love, that's how you can find us now. And we're going to make it as easy for you as possible. I know a lot of you listened on TuneIn as well. We are working with TuneIn as well to get that up and running as well.
So the thing about it is, too, especially like if you know – like our company's background with apps and media, it to get it right on the first, Google app, like Apple stores and Google Play aren't just going to take any old app to download and purchase.
There's an approval process.
Yes, you just have to go through like an approval process and making sure that it is what it is, because you don't really want kinks. So, and we'll take some feedback too. We'll listen to a little bit of, we've listened to a lot of other digital only formats just to kind of see how we want to do the timing and breaks and the mechanics. I know some of you don't really care about the mechanics until you don't care.
Yeah, until it changes. And then,
right.
Yeah.
So, for now, we'll try to train the listening ear with a little bit of breaks, just so we can have some downtime talking. But when that format
it'll shift and evolve.
It will shift.
Yeah.
Right? Because we don't always want a big segment and then a small segment and things like that. So we'll have to kind of tinker with how we can train the listening ear.
And part of the benefit there is it gives us way more flexibility with guests.
That's
That's a huge part of this, where
people ask me why, and I say two things.
Yeah.
Guests and inventory.
Yeah, 100%, right? And honestly, just flexibility for us. Sometimes we're getting into a great conversation, and it's like, oh, there's the hard out on the radio, and we have to cut it off in the middle, and then we have to go to a guest, and we lose this strain of a great conversation we're having. Or, sometimes guests can't come at the top of the hour. We have to get them at an 8:30 or an 8:43. That is something that's been super frustrating for us, where it's like, oh, we would love to talk to you for more than 5 minutes here, but we've got the hard out on the radio. That's a big part of it. And we own all of our own stuff now. That's a big thing. Like we have total autonomy over our inventory, which is a big deal if you care about the business side of things. So that's what's going on as in terms of the format of the show. If you've got some feedback, having some struggles, please let us know. We're, like I said, that number is not exaggeration. About 95% of you are getting us through digital means anyway. But if you're having trouble for whatever reason, reach out to us, let us know, and we will do whatever we can to make it the best experience possible for you. That's the whole point of this, to make it the best experience possible for you. It's funny that Shane played the Colorado clip, the Tommy Hill pick six with Sharp, because when you were talking about, hey, I just really wanted a good season and a bowl game or whatever, the first thing I thought was, man, Colorado felt like it used to.
Mm-hmm.
Like that Colorado game felt like it used to. And I'm thrilled he got to experience that again. Because obviously he had his best year was probably 2009 with Sue. That was probably his best in terms of the team's best year while he was on the call. So it'd been a while since he got to kind of experience that kind of excitement. And man, that Tommy Hill pick six moment was one of those you go, oh, this is gonna be one of those days.
Yeah, it's funny. It's so fluid.
Yeah.
But I just remember before that game where I took the walk with Coach Rule around the deal, and he goes, "We're better than them. We're gonna beat their ass."
Yeah.
That's what he said.
Yeah.
And I was like,
"Oh."
I didn't say a word. Oh, no, you know what? I take that back. I think I whispered to Benny Mack. I think I went back upstairs because I was on the field, and he was upstairs because he's the only reason him and Josh Hilkeman and Russ. So there's a couple people back at the studio, at gate 21, or is it gate 18? Gate 18 that make that thing happen, right? But B-Mac in studio is does a lot of the technical stuff, and I'm like, hey, make sure the mics are off. I feel pretty good about this game. Coach Rule feels good. He never says anything like that. And Ben goes, I don't know what you're talking about. What did he say? I was like, oh, sorry. He said that we're going to beat their ass. That is a real thing. I was so taken aback. I forgot to tell him the news. And he goes, why are we whispering? And I'm just like, he's just a comedian. But
the weirdest thing about that game?
What?
Is and nobody believes me now but I literally had a dream that night that Tommy Hill was going to have a pick six.
Yeah.
It was it was longer in my dream. It was
that was fit, dialed in, focused Tommy Hill.
Yeah, we like that version.
Yeah.
We'll see which version.
Just didn't get it a lot.
We'll see which version the Combine gets this week. See if he can make himself a little bit of money.
Yeah, that one's going to be interesting.
Oh, it's not this week, is it? Next week?
Yeah,
next week. February's getting all confusing for me. Feels like it should be a little warmer than it is right now, and feels like we're still in January. I don't even know what's going on.
Yeah.
So you brought up some officiating as we were going to the break.
It's just weird. I watch a ton of conferences. It is vastly different.
It is. It is not, and I think that's the biggest problem in college basketball is even if you don't love how a game is officiated, everybody knows. I hate when games are officiated the way the St. John's game was, St. John's Creighton. I hate when they're allowed to mug people with impunity and it doesn't matter. You get to do whatever you want. That's my least favorite version of basketball because it's not basketball at all, right? I'm very –
And who was it last week that – who didn't – I was talking about the ACC.
Mm-hmm.
Who took umbrage with what I said about the ACC?
One of our listeners, I don't remember which one, I think they thought when you said soft, you meant bad, is how I read it, because they kind of clarified later, and because they were listing off all these teams that are good. I was like, no, he doesn't mean bad.
Yeah, I'm not talking about I'm an ACC honk, but I can tell you that
finesse versus
the conference is officiated with a ton of finesse.
Yes.
Virginia used to be the only outlier in the conference.
100%. Yeah.
Maybe some Florida State and maybe now Pitt.
Yep.
But that conference overall is very much a freedom of movement conference.
And those teams outside of Virginia for a while don't get the whistle that a Big East team does that plays the same way.
No. So you go to a Big East game.
Mm-hmm. It's a fist fight.
Stylistically, it's
yeah.
Did you watch? That's why Houston struggled in their transition, in my opinion, to the Big 12.
Yeah, because that's more of a finesse conference.
But I do think the Big 12 is kind of in the middle.
Yes, but it's more finesse than they were.
I think it's actually a little more physical than like maybe 6-7 years ago. I think they're allowing a little more.
I think so. That's fair.
Because, but, Baylor, there's just some of the teams have transitioned into a little bit more of a.
Although Baylor's played that way for a while.
But
they were the outlier.
Yeah, they used to kind of be the outlier.
They were the Virginia of the Big 12.
Now they kind of have some help.
Yeah.
UCF and.
I would argue Houston's more physical than Baylor at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, Houston just beats people up.
I mean, did you.
Houston beats people up. They beat their people's heads in.
I didn't know Arizona liked to play like that either, though.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, that kind of caught me off guard a little bit.
All right. How about the Caleb Love experience? Did you like that?
I've never enjoyed that.
It's incredible. And even I don't feel bad because I don't. I saw him do that to us.
Because I just don't.
But it is awkward when it comes out in a broadcast.
Yes.
I mean, they'll say, yeah, listen, that's the Caleb Love experience.
Yeah.
The 5 turnovers and 7 possessions. And you piss away a lead. And then all of a sudden, Hughes Cryer makes a couple threes. And it turns out 4 points is insurmountable. And that one, against Houston, the conference official, it's vastly different,
wildly different. And here's the thing: like, if you're going to officiate games the way they did on Sunday with St. John's and Creighton's not going to win very many of those games. They're just not. Which is that's fine if that's how they're going to officiate. I'm not here to be like, oh, I don't like games that are played that way. But I also just know if that's how a game's going to be called, Creighton's not going to get a lot of wins in those games. They need a little more freedom of movement to be able to win games, especially because they don't have a guy that's just going to break you off the dribble and can get to the rack all the time. Like they need more of an ACC style officiating crew, and they didn't get that on Sunday. And so it kind of is what it is. I'm not going to sit here and go call by call, but I will say I was 100% sure Ryan Kalkbrenner broke his foot.
So that's what I thought.
I was 100% sure.
Yeah, I'm cautiously optimistic about Prince, but I'm like, is it really going to be this way today, guys?
Yeah.
Especially where he grabbed it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was
like the minute he grabbed it, because he didn't roll it, he didn't do anything. I go, oh God, he broke his foot. And then 8 minutes later, he's back in the game. I go, what happened there?
A lot of Mia talk coming up next with our main man, Sam McKewon.
More Hurrdat Sports Live coming up.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. will be back.
Welcome to Hurrdat Sports Live. Here is the sports editor for the Omaha World-Herald, Sam McKewon.
That's fine. That's fine. That's fine.
Sam McKewon.
We're gonna throw the ball, and you just stand back there and throw it where you want to go. That kind of thing.
Sam McKewon.
Are you guys going? Sure.
Now, Sam McKewon.
Sharavino in there. He'll inbound the pass. He gets it in to Martinelli. Martinelli races it across the timeline, moving to the right side in the midcourt. A handoff and a strip by Williams. Williams comes the other way. Jumps it. Dunks it. Tomahawk. Right hand. Nebraska's going to steal this puppy with 1.7 to go. Coming from 20 points behind.
Kicking off hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Live. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. We're presented by Centris Federal Credit Union. We are joined now by Sam McKewon of the Omaha World-Herald. Sam, how are you this morning?
I'm really good. How are you guys?
Sam, are you out and about? Or are you know?
No.
No.
No, it's winter break for the kids, so they're sleeping.
Wow, winter
School's
break.
Just out here generally, so they have 2 days here on Monday and Tuesday. And so no, it's still snowing. I'm just watching the snow.
LPS here for not going to school?
No. This is just they have these 2 days. I think it's for.
I'm laughing because
teacher planning.
West Side. We're not in school here today either. So I'm just
yeah.
I'm just.
Well, is that because of the weather?
No.
President's Day.
Yeah, that's what it is. President's Day.
Yep.
They were off. They were off Friday and off today.
Yep. I think that's become fairly standard in a lot of school districts. So,
and plus,
just watching the snow, I think Omaha got more over the weekend, and we're getting more today.
Well, we're getting crushed right now. So,
are you?
I mean, big fat flakes as I'm watching it build up on the 3 vehicles outside in our parking lot.
They were clean when we got here.
That's fun driving. It's going to be one of those days where everything takes 25 minutes longer than it normally does.
Sam, let me ask you something, because I couldn't quite put this into words, but you've seen so much, and you've seen you've covered some voices before, and I thought one of the cool things among many about Greg was, and maybe I'm misremembering, but how quickly he seemed to have won over the fan base, which, but number one, could be difficult when, depending on where you come from. Number two, Nebraska wasn't having a ton of success on the football field at the time, and it was midstream. It was tumultuous. But by the end, it was like, he's ours. Am I misremembering that, or you think that's about right?
No, you remember it well, and I'm sorry for your loss and of your friend and your partner, and I'm sure this was a hard weekend for you and for so many people who loved him and worked with him and talk about just universal praise. Like, the words that people had for him were pretty extraordinary. No, I think Greg Sharp, absolutely won people over with the kind of person he is, and just the way he called games. I think he has an incredible voice, and so like he could just use his voice to call anything. You could listen to him, read the phone book, but just maybe the way that he was able to, put emotion into those key moments, but like a lot of Midwesterners, he knew when to, he knew how to just kind of tell a story too, and kind of be right there next to you. And so the way that I interacted most with Greg Sharp's voice and his work was on Sports Nightly, right? And then baseball, because I'm watching the football games, and there are a few people who cover the team and beat writers who can kind of listen to you guys simultaneously to watching the game. I'll go back and listen to what you guys said, because I'm not good enough multitaskers. But, I'd be out in the yard, or I'd be, cleaning something down here, and I'd have baseball on the radio.
Mm-hmm.
And it was Greg and Ben, and back in the day it was Lynn Grindle and Nick, and it's just these guys that, and they're just your companion for 3 hours. And Greg's a great companion. Like, he was just such a wonderful presence on a baseball game. He could tell a story. He could get amped up. I remember a game that Nebraska lost, and they lost on a home run, and the way he announced it at the end, he wasn't like harsh or anything. He just said, "My goodness." And that was perfect, And,
that's a good one. Yeah. That's a good one. He'll go to that to express disappointment, but that's about as disappointed as it sounds.
Right.
That is an absolute gem.
Yeah. So
My goodness.
He did that, and he just had a gift for being able to say so much with only a few words and the inflection of his voice, and the really good ones are able to do that. And so, that's much of what I remember. Of course, anytime you would see him, a brief conversation was a warm one, and you could have a long one with him too. And I had a few over the years, maybe not as many as others, but he was always just a great guy, and he will be dearly missed in that role. Obviously, you can't cover all the sports when you're the voice of Husker football, and so that's a family. You're part of the family, Damon. It's you, and it's Jessica, and it's Ben, and it's Matt Coatney, and it's Kent Pavelka, and it's Jake Moeisen, and all that, and so you guys are a family, and that's you lost a member. So again, I'm sorry about that, and everybody's going to be sad for a while. This is going to be tough. I don't know how they plan on handling the spring event, or if it'll even be broadcast on the radio. But that's going to be a tough moment.
When I tell you that discussion is pretty constant and ongoing, I mean it's pretty constant and ongoing. It may be something different tomorrow. There's a lot of ideas, Sam. A lot of ideas.
Yeah.
Let me ask you something about yesterday and resilience, and this is on the heels of a couple of weeks ago, and you said it too. So I mean, I'm gonna give you credit. Out in front a little bit of the streak, you said, hey, enough's enough, right? This is a good coach. It's a good program. Let the past be the past. The week before that, I said, good teams don't, well-coached teams, that's what happens at Washington when you give away a half. You don't yield. You find a way to come back and win that game. Are we officially past now, out loud, the referendums? Because the first half deleted tweets to the second half tweets would say we aren't past it. But, man, I don't know what else has got to happen.
Well, yeah, I mean, I didn't tweet a thing during the game. I thought
it's incredible how we're in the moment.
There was a lot there, yeah, and I thought it was going to be a tough game, just because Nebraska struggled to play Northwestern. and Northwestern is relatively unskilled. You know, Ty Berry's a nice player, and that freshman's good. Martinelli's pretty good, but that's not an overly skilled team. And so, you know, Nebraska did not play well early. They were out hustled. I mean, there's no other way to put it.
Yeah.
But once they kind of got their feet under them, you could tell that the game was going to turn, and it's not a vintage year in the Big Ten. We need to be honest about that. It's a good year, but it's not. There's some teams at the bottom, including Washington and Northwestern and a few others, that just don't have enough firepower. And so Nebraska's got enough, and they got Bryce Williams, and that helps. And, you know, Juwan Gary always shows up. You can always count on him to do something in a game that changes the momentum of it. And, you know, they found a way. And yes, and what you're finding is they get a different unsung hero each game now. So it's, you know what you're going to get from Bryce. You know what you're going to get from Juwan. If Essegian's healthy, he's going to contribute what he contributes. But then there's always, who's the fourth guy? And on Sunday, it was Braxton Mears. 2 days from now, it might be somebody else. But you kind of know now that, like, they're going to get an extra contributor from that group of players that they're not stars, but they kind of do what they're supposed to. On Wednesday night, it could be Raleigh Worcester goes for 9 points and 6 rebounds and 4 assists. You just know that they're going to get that extra contribution from somebody, and that's probably what's going to get them in the NCAA tournament. I think they're 2 wins away. I think they need 2 more, and winning at Penn State would be big, and then they got to find 1 more out of that list at the end, and the list at the end is tougher than Penn State. So I'd count on beating Penn State. That's what I would do if I were Nebraska.
So, Sam, are you a net guy? And I get it. Like, if you hate the quads, I hate the quads. I've hated quads from day one. But do you lend any credence to the net rankings?
Well, they have to.
Okay, so
that's one of the tools they use.
So
now
nine of the top 32 teams in net rankings are in the Big Ten.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and well, I mean, they have 18 teams in the league. So they ought to have quite a few. Like, at this point, there's a bunch. But I wouldn't describe it, like, again, I wouldn't describe this as, like, the year the SEC has had, right? So, like, the SEC has, you know, on collection, just a better collection of teams, you know, than the Big Ten does, or appears to. You know, we'll see what happens in the tournament. But, yeah, I mean, I think that they've the bottom half of the Big Ten's not great, and you know, I'm going based on kind of what I watch, and you know, so we'll see. Nebraska, again, they've done a pretty good job of winning the games they need to win. They've been very good on the road. You know, maybe they need 3 more. I don't know. As I look at, because I've kind of said 20, and they've got at Penn State, Michigan, Minnesota, at Ohio State and Iowa. Now, out of that group, if they beat Penn State, Minnesota, and Iowa, I think they're in. I do. I think they're probably in the dance. If they get to 19, and let's say they lose to Iowa, and they beat Penn State and they beat Minnesota, and they lose to Michigan, Ohio State, and Iowa, then you might want to win 2 in the Big Ten. I think it's going to be real close, you know, and so. And I'd say 20, not because the NCAA tournament's looking at 20, not the committee, but just what it means if they get to 20. And then
you think 20 is safe? Like safe?
Well, I think it will help. So Penn State is a quad 1 / quad 2. Minnesota's a quad 2 or 3, and then Iowa's, I think, a quad 2. So if you get those 3, well, that's great. Beating Michigan now that would do it. So what you're hoping is that somewhere along the way you get it, you bag a game that's big time. And beating Michigan at home, and Michigan is currently leading the Big Ten, I believe. Beating Michigan at home, that's where you need the crowd. So next Monday night, that crowd's got to show up and be just crazy, because that's the team you got to beat. Like, if you want to get all the way in and say, yeah, you know, we just answered every question, you beat Michigan. So, you know, we'll see how it shakes out down the stretch. I do think they're going to make it, but it's going to be tight, and I think everybody knows it's going to be tight.
We're talking with Sam McKewon from the Omaha World-Herald. Sam, as you kind of look at, you mentioned, you know, Penn State is right on that borderline of quad 1, quad 2. Is there a game in here that you look at? Obviously, Michigan would help a ton, but is there a game in here you look at where you go, hey, if they switch one of these, you feel significantly better about them making it?
Michigan. Yep, that's probably the one.
But you can't switch it for Minnesota, right?
Well, I mean, if you were going to pick between Michigan and Iowa, and I know this is a chagrin to Husker fans, I think you'd probably pick Michigan.
Sure, yeah.
But you don't want to lose to Iowa. So, like, that's a personal thing, and it's personal to everybody. Like, it's very personal. They all care. Iowa cares. Nebraska cares at this point. That's all very, very, very whatever you want to call it. And so that'll be a huge game. That'll be a game that Nebraska puts a lot of energy into winning because it means a lot to the players personally. So, I don't know. I mean, I think somewhere down the stretch here, they're going to win one that you may not think they were going to win, and they might lose one. Could be Penn State. I mean, Penn State's not a great team, but here's what I'll say about the Penn State game. Much like Washington and a little bit like Northwestern, it's a bring your own juice game. There's probably going to be 2,000 people there. It's not going to be super well attended. Nebraska's going to have to bring its own energy. And the advantage is if you do that, the crowd's going to shut up because there's not many of them there. If you don't, then you can't use the crowd to get you back in the game. So that's another deal where Nebraska's had to do this multiple times this year where they've had to bring their own energy on the road, and I think they'll have to do it again on Wednesday in order to win.
Sam, I get it. I'm a nerd, but I know you like to stay abreast of things. I had the multi-view on yesterday watching Creighton, St. John, and Nebraska, Northwestern at the same time. And I get conference officiating it's always been different, right? Different conferences are officiated differently. Is it more pronounced now with what's going on with officiating and the amount of work that they've got to do and guys kind of having to stay regional with conferences? Because it's hard to fathom that I was watching the same sport between both those games, but I was. And this is a guy that watches the Colonial Athletic. I watch Big Sky. Like I like hoops, man. So,
right.
But it's hard. It's very, very different watching how these games are played.
So how would you describe the difference between the way the Big Ten and the Big East are officiated, at least yesterday?
So they're close, but the Big East is still much more rugged. It just is. And it's not what happens. I've thought about this a ton, so I'm glad you asked me. It's more how it's officiated on the perimeter than it is in the paint. In the Big East, you're allowed to touch significantly more away from out on the perimeter than you are
off ball
than you are in the Big Ten. There's a ton that happens off the ball in the Big East that is borderline incredible. I watch guys like it's weird. It's definitely a different game.
Yeah. So here's my thought. I watch quite a bit of Big East and Big Ten basketball. Those are the two leagues that I watch probably the most of, in addition to the Big 12.
Yeah, the Big 12 is kind of interesting. I don't get your thoughts on that either because they're kind of a tweener, but go ahead.
Yeah. I think the Big East is uniformly more consistently officiated. I think the Big Ten has, and you can talk to all the Nebraska beat writers, I think they would say there's nights when you kind of know one thing may happen and nights when it could be something else entirely. And I thought yesterday, that game was a little bit inconsistently officiated. There was, and it actually tilted in Nebraska's direction as the game went on. But I thought there were some moments where, some very, very ticky-tack stuff called underneath. And
yeah, you could make the case, Sam, that little 5-6 minutes where Nebraska was like getting to the deck and they were scrambling out of the double, where they cut it to like, I don't know, it's 53-47 or something like that. There was like a 4 or 5 minute stretch where if that game's called a little tighter, Nebraska may not be able to make that run.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah,
it was super grimy.
I thought it was better officiated and anyway, the Big East, I think, is actually slightly more consistent. And so you're right. I think that it's rugged. It is true on the perimeter. I'm sure Creighton fans were very frustrated yesterday.
Oh.
I understand and I heard from a few, like, the officiating in that game is interesting. And St. John's challenges officials to do, to look at the game a certain way. And of course, Rick Pitino is a titan in the sport in his home arena in Madison Square Garden. It's going to be a tough ask for Creighton. I thought Creighton played really well yesterday. And I think, they lost by 6 and oh well, and tough, but man, I thought I actually played really well. And I think, again, I tweeted that I thought Creighton has a better NCAA tournament profile run in them than St. John's does. And here's why. When you get to the tournament, a team like St. John's, which cannot shoot the ball very well, is going to run into that 12 or that 13 seed that, can beat you 55-53.
Yeah, they're going to get a pace of play team, and it's going to look awful.
Yeah, they have a potentiality of losing a game because they can't make a shot, and they're going to lose to a MAC team or, a Big West team or something like that. Last year, Auburn lost to Yale, and Auburn's a hell of a basketball team, but they have some of the same, extremely athletic, shooting comes and goes, and St. John's is going to have, I think they're going to struggle to get out of the first weekend because of it. Whereas, and I'm not saying Creighton won't lose their first game. I'm not saying they won't. They might, but I still believe that if Creighton makes shots, when they go out and they've been toughened up in the Big East, then they go out and they play these teams that aren't as tough as the Big East teams that they play, and all of a sudden the shots are open and they can make plays. And I think you've seen how the Big East prepares Creighton for the NCAA tournament, which is why you've seen them make 3 of the last 4 Sweet 16s, and the other one they didn't make. They took Kansas, the national champions, the final minute. They are prepared to play in March based on the way the Big East prepares them. And the Big East is underrated in terms of the quality of its teams. You could take a couple of those teams that may not make the NCAA tournament, Villanova, and you could put them in the SEC and they'd be just fine. The Big East is a very, very good league. And so, Creighton will be prepared. And when they get to the tournament, then all of a sudden those shots that they didn't get earlier in the season are open. And they can do all kinds of stuff, and Isaac Trout's going to score 15. And so I'm really bullish on where Creighton can go in mid-March versus what's happening now. They're in a tough stretch, but they're going to be very dangerous. Nobody's going to want to play Creighton in a month.
I'm just praying for an ACC officiating crew in that first-round matchup.
Right.
Sam, one of the things that DB and I were talking about earlier and that we were most impressed with Nebraska and the way they've sort of developed over the course of the season was shot selection. It seems like earlier in the year, if they'd faced in a situation like they did against Washington or like they did yesterday, it seems like they would have started taking some more ill-advised shots, whether it was a bunch of Juwan Gary threes that maybe weren't great, whether it was maybe not being as aggressive to the rim. How have you thought about their shot selection development throughout the season? Because I think I would make an argument that might be the best coaching that Hoiberg has done over the course of the year.
Just didn't get out of pocket.
Part of it is his roster selection, right?
Sure.
So he goes out and gets guys that are honestly 400 level guys. Like Bryce Williams had a PhD in college basketball when he arrived at Nebraska, right? And so so did Andrew Morgan, and so did Raleigh Worcester. All these players, they all have a really good idea of how to win basketball games at a high level in high major leagues. And so I think part of it is he brings guys in who really just want to win. At this point, they're not about, well, what's my NBA stock going to be, even if I think Bryce can play in the NBA. And so I think they've done that, and Juwan Gary will do whatever's asked of him. And I think they do have to remind Juwan sometimes, get to the rim like they do. Don't settle for that shot out there. You can go past a lot of the guys that are guarding you. So, I think some of it's that, and some of it's just understanding time and circumstance, knowing that, again, some of the lower teams in the Big Ten, you don't have to get it all back at once. I think Hoiberg said that yesterday. You don't have to get it all back against Northwestern right away. You don't have to rattle it off because they're going to go off again. Washington's the same deal. Like you can get into these teams and wear them down. And I thought Nebraska did a really good job both at Washington and at Northwestern of understanding that they're the better team and just taking the time to prove that over 20 minutes instead of trying to get it all back right away. And that's to their you can credit them with that. I think they do a nice job of selecting players who come in understanding how to play the college basketball at a high level. They're not asking, really young players. And that, I'll tell you what, some of the young guys they brought in, they haven't played as much. So they're, Gavin Griffiths is going to have to develop, and a few others. Like they've had, some of the young guys have to develop in Hoiberg's system or they don't play as much. And so I think he likes having older guys who know what they're doing.
Yeah, it's interesting, Sam. 5 road wins for Nebraska. They're tied for the top, 17, 18 in quad 1 wins with 6. Is it safe to say it's a good basketball team?
Yes.
Okay.
I think it is a good team. I think and again, it's a team that beat Creighton, and that's going to be a gift that keeps on giving here with the selection committee. They didn't just beat Creighton; they whipped them, and that will be very, very helpful in a month's time. And I do think Nebraska will make the tournament, and then it comes down to matchups and how they play against, how they play in that moment, because I think they can break their they can get the first win in Nebraska history in the NCAA tournament. But they're going to have to, every night Nebraska's got to bring it, or otherwise they don't win. Like, that's the thing. They got to be really consistent and really tough in order to get this thing done. And if they're able to, I don't know if Fred's going to be a Coach of the Year candidate in the Big Ten, but he ought to be.
That's Sam McKewon, Omaha World-Herald. Sam, we appreciate it as always. We'll talk to you next week.
Take care.
You know one of the cool things?
What's that?
We didn't get cut off.
I do like not getting cut off. We could take cancers a little bit longer. Appreciate not having the hard outs. That's DB. I'm Ravi. Lulla. More Hurrdat Sports Live coming next.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back.
Welcome to Hurrdat Sports Live.
Guys, I'm great. What was for breakfast? Or have you not had it yet?
Oh, my favorite, because you and I have had a few breakfasts on the road. So we got an egg plate, we got biscuits and gravy, we got a bacon, egg, and cheese sandwich, and a sausage, egg, and cheese sandwich. What would G Sharp go with?
Oh, my gosh. I can't pass up biscuits and gravy.
Thank you. That's my guy.
You got that somewhere? You got that somewhere in the vicinity? I'm chomping. Let's go.
Sharp, was breakfast before or after you had to guide him to the right stadium?
That's before.
It was several hours before. Yeah. Yeah, that was the encore.
Yeah.
The trip to the stadium.
Yeah. All right.
Welcome back, Hurrdat Sports Live. We're halfway through the show. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here on the Pillar exterior stage. That was at one of our live breakfasts in the fall.
I think that stretch might have been. Was that Minnesota, I'm guessing he's talking about? So that had to be Keys Cafe. We went to Keys Cafe.
For the stadium, it was definitely Minnesota.
Yeah, we went to Keys Cafe that morning.
How was it?
You know, I ate light because it was a game day.
Yeah, you don't like to eat while you're working.
And I went for the company, not for the meal.
Yeah.
So I know exactly what I had.
Yeah. What'd you have?
I had 6 pieces of bacon and a piece of dry wheat toast. What?
Just very on brand.
Yeah. B-Mac had an omelet. I know exactly what we had.
Did Sharp have the biscuits and gravy?
Yes, he did.
Attaboy.
Yeah. We walked. It was we passed some really good places too.
Yeah, just like skip
But
them.
Keys it's popular.
Oh, okay.
And we got in
pretty easy.
Yeah. Yeah. It was, you know, he's not sleeping.
Yeah, really?
Mm-mm. No, Sharp's up.
Really?
Yeah.
Biscuits and gravy is my go-to.
I can't remember where we were, but it might have been Purdue. And I always scope out the treadmill. I always go to the fitness room, and I try to get there before, anytime between 6:30 and 7, because usually post 7, people are going to want to get on. 6:30, I got a good window to use what I want.
Mm-hmm.
So I walk downstairs, and he's sitting at the table, like fully dressed, sitting at the table with his mic set up. And it's probably 6:40. And I'm like, what are you doing? And he said, oh, I'm waiting on Coach Joseph to come down. I want to get the pregame out of the way so he can attack his day. Because, you know, Mickey was kind of first starting.
Yeah.
And even in that moment, Sharpie was so appreciative or so respectful of someone else's time that he didn't want to get Mickey out of his routine of how a normal game day would go.
Sure.
So he's like, well, we'll just get it out of the way. Mickey was like, oh, let's just get it out of the way early, and that way I can go on about my day. I still got Malachi Coleman to call and all these other guys.
Yeah.
And Sharpie obliged. I'm like, that's just to make it easier on Mickey's transition too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Like, hey, what works for you?
It's caretaker. He's a caretaker.
Well, I'll not forget that.
Yeah.
It's just the little stuff he does.
For sure. And that's usually, I mean, you know, at the end of the day, that's usually what you remember, right?
Yeah. I mean, he'd say, you know, that's the team space. We don't need to eat. Let's go do our own thing.
Yeah.
Like, that's just who he is.
You know, it was Saturday, like it going into that Nebraska baseball game Saturday night against Vanderbilt. It was one of those where you're kind of just sitting there and you're like, I know it probably doesn't really matter, but please let this baseball team win today.
Yeah.
And obviously they did. They took 2 out of the 3 in Arizona. Got that win over 16th ranked Vanderbilt.
That's a good win. It was a well played game, and Irvine's tough. I mean,
Irvine's really good.
So, and I was surprised Nebraska was favored.
Mm-hmm.
Irvine's
really good.
I mean, it's the only team that was in the postseason last year that had 20 wins at home and on the road.
Yeah.
Their pitching is better than a year ago.
Yeah.
I was surprised Nebraska was favored on Friday.
Especially because they've been, like you see, Irvine's been good for a little while.
Yeah.
So they're not really sort of, they shouldn't surprise people. Yeah. But maybe it's a brand name thing with Nebraska that you get the benefit of the doubt, or you're looking at the rankings and you're like, oh, well, Nebraska's ranked.
And I mean, Mason came in pretty highly touted, though.
Yeah.
Just on the struggle bus early, but the bounce back against Vandy, and then they handled business against San Diego.
Yep.
Not a bad weekend for the conference, I guess. I mean, Michigan walked off Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll see how good that the conference is as a whole. But
yeah, and they'll be back at it again today, staying in Arizona for an extra day and catching up with GCU.
2 of the greater. I mean, obviously Ben's Open
mm-hmm.
was sensational. But man, go back and listen to Coatney.
Mm.
It was really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not surprised at Benny Max just because, and he surprised me with one. It was the first broadcast Sharp missed.
Mm-hmm.
And he knows how I am, so he didn't tell me that during the pregame that's what he was going to do.
Mm.
I looked at Josh Hilkeman, our engineer, who's like the goat of the goats, and he's looking at me, and it's like, if he would have even remotely warned us, we probably would have walked out. But because he didn't and went into it anyway,
yeah,
like we're just, do you have Kleenex? I don't have Kleenex. Do you have Kleenex? But so but Code is so, he's got that gregarious, he's got the big personality.
Mm-hmm.
He's really funny and he can be sarcastic. He showed a different level yesterday. Nebraska got off to a good start. Almost got off. Illinois is tough.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good basketball team on the road. I felt like I had just seen the inside of that building a couple weeks ago.
Been there recently.
Yeah. Just across the street from where we stayed. But
it's not a bad little campus.
No, it's okay.
It's not bad.
It's okay. Like I went for a walk that morning. It was freezing the morning of the Buckus, and one turn put me like on the back stretch of Nebraska's East Campus. If I would have gone left and not right, I wouldn't have been in kind of like the ag back part.
Mm-hmm.
I could have stayed kind of on, I don't know, it's not even really a strip. I mean, there's railroad tracks.
And I say little campus. It's actually very spread out.
It's so when we came back and we rode the golf cart back that night, I was like, shoot, I should have walked that way in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
That had given me a different vantage point.
Yeah.
Because there wasn't a ton to see.
No, there are like stretches of it that kind of look like your typical picturesque college campus and town or whatever. And then you've got the sports complexes sort of in a different area. It is very spread out.
Apparently,
there's a ton of different.
Or by the I Hotel,
mm-hmm.
there's church. So it was Sunday morning.
Yeah.
So it was packed. And then the game had an early tip. It was noon.
Mm-hmm.
So it was packed. So there are a lot
going on.
And there was like some Shakespeare Camelot deal.
So that's where you ended up, right?
You should have heard LeVar Arrington. He's already kind of loosey-goosey.
Yeah.
He's like, and when I say 0 cares given,
yeah,
I mean 0 cares given.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like LeVar is terribly bothered by much.
Somebody would walk by in costume and he'd be like, Macbeth? I know this isn't Othello. He would have those kind of jokes because he's super smart.
Yeah. He was in our former life. He'd be on the air when you'd like come in,
He was telling Christian and those guys, they just sat and chopped it up early on Saturday morning. He was with our AD, how he basically thought his way out of the league.
Yeah.
LeVar.
Yeah.
Didn't want to take the needle, kind of a natural, holistic guy. He's his own man. He told these great stories about, kind of rubbing Paterno. He's like, he loved Paterno, but how, Paterno just wasn't one of those guys that he goes, well, he kept wanting to be this father figure. And he's like, man, Benny, he's like, I got a dad, and he's a good one. So, so I was vibing with him.
Yeah.
Because he's just so honest.
Yeah, he's pretty real.
Yeah.
That's funny. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. We're here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. We'll be back with more Hurrdat Sports Live coming up next.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back.
You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Live.
They give the snap. Is it a safety? He's right near the goal line.
He didn't get out.
There, no signal yet. Husker defenders think they've got a safety as they hit him right at the goal line. The officials talking now.
Yeah.
There goes. Safety for Nebraska.
Felt good about that.
Motion toward the line of scrimmage. Fake the handoff, roll the pocket to the near side. Looking downfield as a man open downfield, but shoots it too high. And it's picked off. Intercepted Malcolm Hartzog. 10 up to the 14-yard line as Malcolm Hartzog now to the 19 as he goes and start the mashed potatoes dance. Huskers get a pick.
Wrapping up hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Live. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. We're here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill and presented by Centris Federal Credit Union. Maybe you're out this morning and you're like, ooh, man, I might need a vehicle that's a little better on the snow. You forgot, I know it'd been 300 days since we had significant snowfall. You forgot you lived in Nebraska. Centris Federal Credit Union can help you out with their auto loans. Get to centrisfcu.org to talk to one of their experts about maybe getting a loan for a new vehicle so you're not slipping and sliding around out there on the snow. Because, again, it is February in Nebraska. You got to have the vehicle for it. Get to centrisfcu.org, federally insured by NCUA. DB.
What's up?
So we had a very different experience this weekend with professional exhibitions. Because on the one hand, it pains me to say this, because growing up, I loved the NBA All-Star Weekend. Loved it. I loved the three-point contest. I loved the dunk contest. I loved the game itself. I mean, I loved the early 2000s Jordan Wizards game winner in his last All-Star game. I loved the Kobe Jordan early in 98 when Kobe's on the way up and you can see him standing next to each other and kind of picking each other's brains and stuff.
Not surprising you left out the signature moment.
Which that one?
Because you hate on Magic Johnson.
So I was like 4 when that happened. So that was a little before my time.
And I think they let him go for 20, but
maybe a little bit. I don't hate on Magic Johnson. I just am not. Never mind. Anyway, but I love the NBA All-Star Weekend. So to see what it is now pains me. But then I go and I'm watching this Four Nations face-off that the NHL is doing, right? And first of all, I'm going to be honest. I have no idea what it is.
I love it. So my only complaint is,
first
of all, I want pros. I want pros playing in those type of events.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm cool, especially when America is being represented.
Mm-hmm.
I want professionals.
Yeah.
I like the fact that it's Sullivan. It's coaching the U.S. I don't know about like all the fighting that happened with Canada. Like they had like 3 in the first 9 seconds.
They did, yeah.
But of course, I was keeping tally. I just want to make sure that the U.S. won all of them. Not that I have anything against Canada. I don't. Promise.
Just like I don't have anything against Wisconsin.
But they got the number 4 right, in my opinion, because everything now seems to be going to like these little mini tournaments.
Mm-hmm.
They have to do something different in the NBA.
Yeah.
Because I get it.
I like that they tried.
The in-game turn. I get it. The whole
in-season
tournament thing.
I like that they tried something different this year. It didn't work.
No bueno.
But I like that they tried something different. So I'm sitting there, was it Saturday night, watching USA Canada. And like you said, there's 3 fights in the first 10 seconds. Apparently, the U.S. didn't like that people were booing their anthem and stuff. So
I felt like that was an incredibly bad taste.
Yeah, so they're throwing down.
Real quick, is Sid the best on that team? He seemed like he was front and center there for a little bit.
Well, he's 70.
But that's why I was asking.
No.
Or is that just something standard that they would go to?
He is Canada, right? So he's kind of the poster child, and he's still playing at a relatively decent level, but he's no longer the best Canadian.
Yeah, I mean, McDavid's better, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know a ton about hockey, obviously. But the reason I bring this up is because there was such a stark difference in the amount of, I'll call it professionalism and competitiveness in what we saw with hockey versus what we saw in basketball, where I think there was one guy that cared in the entire event. Do you know who it was?
Ooh.
It's a weird one.
So of the 4 teams?
Yes, he was on one of the 4 teams. And he was in some of the other stuff as well, some of the other events.
So okay, so that leaves out Giannis. Lillard?
Wembanyama.
Oh yeah, he was dialed.
That dude is a psycho, and I love it.
He's dialed.
Like so if you weren't watching, and I don't blame you because it was all terrible mostly.
He was that's a good pull.
So the first one was Saturday in the skills competition where he literally talked to the rules experts and was like, hey, do I have to actually try and make shots or can I just throw he's trying to skirt the rules to win a stupid skills competition. Yeah, so we could win a skills competition, right? So that's one thing. And then did you see him at the end of the game when they give up a backdoor layup to Tatum and he's guarding up top and then he turns around and sees somebody just getting back cut and he goes,
he's beside himself.
Yeah, he is furious. Yeah. You hear him early, he's talking to Donovan Mitchell in I think one of the early games. He goes, hey, we're going to play hard. Like, let's play hard. To Donovan Mitchell, who's been in the league for however long. Like, Wemby's dialed. I like Wemby.
Ask those guys. We would do like these the Nebraska game things, and they would take the seniors and we would go play basketball and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like we would try.
Yeah.
And the people, like, I think that's important.
Yes.
I really do.
Yes.
And remember a couple weeks ago when I was mad at the NFL skills competition.
Mm-hmm. Because Justin Jefferson's out there and Jamar Chase is out there.
They were just lollygagging through the tape, and I was, you guys are competing.
You know what I think it is? Maybe I'm going to armchair psychologist here. It's possible. But I think there's part of it where a lot of these guys have been the dude their whole life. And they don't often get to go head-to-head against guys.
And just have fun?
No, that are also dudes. And I think a lot of them have to tell themselves in their head, no, I'm the best, no, I'm the best, no, I'm the best, and are afraid to find out that they might not be.
No.
You don't think so?
No. I mean, I shouldn't sound so dismissive.
I know that wasn't a thing as much in your day. I think that's much more common now.
I think it would be just the opposite.
What do you mean?
Like, let's lay it on the line. Like AFC, NFC, or receiver.
I think
if I was Justin Jefferson, I wouldn't want Jamar Chase to outdo me in anything.
I get that. But I also think you're wired differently than some of these guys.
I don't know, man.
I do.
I don't know.
You think a lot of these guys are having competitions with themselves to see how long they can leave the door open, like little games they play with themselves at their own house? Because I don't think they are.
Okay. It's fair.
Like, I think that's what I mean, though.
I just feel like if you're out there.
But I don't think everybody thinks that way.
Let's do it.
I don't think, I don't know. I'm doing this from.
Plus, you're more apt to get hurt jacking around.
In football, for sure. I think, and I'm speaking mostly about basketball. I know we brought up the Pro Bowl here, but.
Because it's kind of the same thing, though.
Having coached some of these guys, some of this generation fairly recently, basketball players are weird, man.
Oh, I know.
Like, there is a.
I will not fight you over that.
Like, there's this weird of like, oh, I'm not that competitive. I just want to hoop. Like, or I don't really, they don't really even register. Like, and part of it's the AAU thing. They don't even register wins and losses. They just want to hoop. They just want to play. And so they're like, I used to have guys that would come into the gym and be like, oh, coach, I got like 2 hours of work. And it's like, you were in flip-flops the whole time. You didn't get any work in. But they're like, no, I was hooping. And it's like, no, that's not a thing. Right? So I think
I don't know. Okay.
So maybe that's not a thing with like Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase.
I want to get on this generation, though, because if you have to be honest. Mm-hmm. We can't be disingenuous. If you think we got punk-ass kids, it's because we have punk-ass parents.
100%.
So
I'm not a parent, so it's not on me. But all you people, I don't know.
It's like the players in our weight room. They get upset that your shoes have to be tied,
mm-hmm.
and you cannot wear. You have to wear laced sneakers. There's no flip-flops.
Sure. No Crocs, anything like that.
No. Coach Samanji gets mad over pajama bottoms.
Yeah.
Now, I think that's a little.
I'm with Coach Samanji on this one.
And so what he'll say is.
Pajama bottoms drive me crazy.
What he'll say is if, it's like you're allowing leaks. You're allowing potential for. And I like to alleviate that. Mm-hmm. I don't want any back and forth. I don't want any.
No holes in the boat.
No, nope. I don't. Well, they're just like sweat. So no, we're just no altogether.
Yeah.
Right. So I get that.
Yeah.
But I do think there are young people that are coming around that actually want that.
I agree. But I think you bring up a really good point, right?
And there's plenty. I like how you gave the analogy between, the four nations, because the way that the NHL has evolved, people got tired of seeing, 16 to 13 NHL hockey All-Star games.
No, they want to see the game. They want to see the real sport. Like, the reason All-Star games were fun was because you got to see the best of the best go at each other and like play the game. They're not even playing the game anymore. All these, especially in the NBA, and I'll do basketball because it's what I'm most familiar with. But you have these guys that are, they're the professional equivalent of out there in pajama bottoms and flip-flops on TNT, just like, oh, I'm just hooping. And it's like, I love Steph Curry, right? I like watching him make half-court shots, but like, it's like, oh, I'm just out here hooping. Yeah. And it's like, I don't want to watch that. I want to watch Wembanyama and Kevin Durant go at each other as hard as they can. Like, that's fun. That's what I want to watch. And they just don't do that. But you're right. Like, they didn't just grow up that way. Like, there's a reason. There's the same generation of people, hockey players and basketball players, right? So it's not a full generation thing.
That's why I give a little
part
pushback.
Part of it, though, like hockey growing up and basketball growing up are very different.
But I will say this. You want a tepid or lukewarm take?
Let's do it.
I think basketball's in a little bit of trouble. And it's not just the NBA. I'm talking AAU. I'm talking summer. It has become elite, make allowances versus forget about developmental, and then there's everybody else. You're going to need some middle to make this thing work, and it's non-existent.
You got to find some room in the middle class. I will say, you brought up a really good point, though, about you got punk-ass kids. It's from punk-ass parents. Let's not forget, if you're complaining about participation trophies, who made the trophies?
Wow.
We'll have more Hurrdat Sports Live coming up next.
will be back.
Welcome to Hurrdat Sports Live.
Finds Uzan, 7 to shoot now. Uzan left sideline, back to Tugler with 6. Over to Cryer. Cryer off the screen. Straight on 3. Got it! LJ Cryer. Back-to-back threes. Cougars up 5.
Lobbing down to the block. Mata on Renew. Kicks it out. Andrews, open 3 coming. It's in! And the Bruins are up by 10.
19.4 on the game clock.
Williams dribbles it 3 times, flips it, puts it up. Got it! Huskers up by 2. 64-62. Bryso.
Kicking off hour number 3 here on Hurrdat Sports Live, presented by Centris Federal Credit Union. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. We're joined now by Zach Pereles. He works for CBS Sports covering college basketball and the NFL, 2 of our very favorite things. Zach, how are you this morning?
I'm great. College basketball coming in just in time now that the NFL's in the offseason.
Well, sort of, and we'll get to the NFL in a second. I guess the whole tag, you're it, and quarterback round robins are up next, but the draft, it's the season that's 12 months out of the year. But I'm going to go back to college basketball here for a second. With all that's going on and with conference affiliation and the strength of the SEC and the depth of, well, I guess I'd say 8 or 9 in the Big Ten, and you're looking at basketball as a whole. Has shooting, 3-point shooting, is that still at the front of your forethought as you watch some of these teams at the top end have success here in college basketball in 2025?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is if you are a team that struggles to shoot, you better have something else. You better have a plan B on offense, whether that's we see some really good big guys around the league or around the country, really. Or you better have really aggressive drivers or guys who can cut off the ball. I think that's one of my favorite things about college basketball is you get so many different teams that have different strengths and weaknesses. It's not, I love the individual skill of the NBA, but I love being able to turn on a college basketball game and see something very different from that game. And then, a couple hours later, another game comes on and maybe you get a team that is more 3-point happy. So you still get so many different strategies. So I still think shooting's at the forefront. You've got to have shooters. You've got to have guys who can knock down big shots in big moments. But the fact that it's not so predicated on it's a make-or-miss league makes it a lot of fun.
All right, so let me give you just a couple of handfuls. And one we just watched yesterday play Creighton. St. John's is obviously in that discussion, doesn't really shoot it well from behind the arc. Arizona, Texas A&M comes to mind. Michigan State. I'm thinking for teams that, could get some love on the seed lines, but will have to do something different to kind of overcome some of those voids. Any of the aforementioned, Michigan State, a St. John's, and A&M. I'm going to leave Arizona out just because of my disdain for Caleb Love as a Carolina guy. But, those teams will get really good seeds. Is there anything exceptional outside of their shooting?
for Texas A&M, like you mentioned them in there, they are so good defensively. Like, I love, like, you've got Buzz Williams sweating through every single shirt he has on the sideline. He's playing about as hard defensively as his players are. And then Wade Taylor, like one of the best closers in basketball. So I like Texas A&M. I always go back and forth. I'm always going to lean teams that can shoot it better. And at some point, you've got to be able to hit shots because not every offensive rebound you're going to get. But Texas A&M is a team, they're just so tough. They're playing really well right now. And if it's close, you're going to get a whole lot of Wade Taylor big shot magic. So there's a team that I really like that doesn't particularly shoot it well from the outside, but will grind you down, win some games. And that SEC, like, you mentioned it earlier, it's unbelievably tough. But I really like all of those teams, and I love watching Texas A&M. They just work so hard, and when those shots aren't falling, you know they're going to bring it defensively.
So, we talk a lot about the Big Ten here, and one of the teams we've sort of been fascinated with a little bit is Illinois. They've got a ton of top-end talent, but we've seen them be super inconsistent throughout the season. What do you do with a team like Illinois when you've seen the highs, but have also seen some not great-looking lows?
Yeah, I always am a guy who is going to weigh the lows more heavily than the highs for a team that's this inconsistent, especially. So I don't trust Illinois. I just have so much trouble with, there's sometimes when their defense looks really locked in. There's sometimes when it's not. It's one of those teams you mentioned. It's like almost frustrating how inconsistent you are because you see the highs, but they're still a little young, which I always worry about, especially, down the back half of the season and into March. So I kind of lean on the side of I don't trust them. I don't think that they're a second weekend team in the tournament. They don't seem to put it all together at the same time well enough against the best competition.
I'm trying to take advantage of your range, so I'm backdooring my real question about the top of the SEC. So I'm going to get back to pace of play. And I look at a team like Houston, and I look at Tennessee. And does pace of play bother you when you try to project longevity in March based on how teams get shots up? And I would even throw in a team like UCLA in there as well, another pace of play team that I think is a tough matchup. Does pace of play bug you when you sort through top teams?
It really doesn't. I think that a big thing for me is that teams who are really consistent in who they are is what I love. Like a lot of those pace of play teams that you mentioned, I don't know if I love those teams in particular, but they are teams that the really good slow pace of play teams are the teams that don't care if you want to speed them up. They're okay if you want to play a slow pace of play. And I think the biggest example of that is the last couple of years from UConn. Like, they have not been a very fast team. Now, they haven't been super slow, and they will run when the opportunities are given to them. But they were slow teams. Like, they were nothing special in terms of pace. In the 200s 2 years ago, 330th last year in tempo, and we saw how good that team was. So I really don't worry about pace of play, to be honest. If you've got the guys, you can, and they fit the system well. Another thing that I kind of like, honestly, about a little bit slower pace of play is that when your heart's beating fast and it's March and your season's on the line, if you really have a belief in what you do, that's okay, whether it's fast, whether it's slow. So pace of play doesn't bother me too much. And UConn really taught me that last year and the year before.
All right, that leads me to I just didn't want to ask low-hanging fruit questions. I'm one of these guys, Zach, that has lobbied for Florida for, probably about 6 weeks. They were plus 1,700 to win a title, and I told Ravi, I said, gosh, you got to kind of probably take a flyer on Florida, right? Like, they're really good. And I like them better than the number 2 team in the conference, which is in Tuscaloosa and Bama, because of kind of what you just said. If I concede that Auburn is at the top, I like Florida next because of the versatility and length in the backcourt and their patience offensively. They can get you a ton of different ways through that backcourt.
Yeah, I'm wondering if you had a wiretap into my brain, because when I was prepping for this show, I just, for the last few weeks even, have just kept coming back to Florida. Like you said, they beat you in so many different ways.
Yeah.
Walter Clayton, you blink
sweet.
and that guy has 10 points in a couple minutes. I love, when I look
They're
at
long in the backcourt.
Yep. They're long. They have experience. They have depth. You look at a guy like Thomas Hall. That guy comes off the bench and almost has a triple double after Alex Condon leaves a minute into the game. I love Florida. That is my national championship pick right now. I love the offense. I love how many different ways they, like you said, they can score. But what I really like, you mentioned the backcourt. I think their front court probably has 4 or 5 guys that would start almost anywhere in the country. Chinyelu is really, really good defensively. Alex Condon, really skilled, probably going to be a first-round NBA guy. You already talked about Thomas Hall, and then, they just got back Micah Handloden, who is, I think, 7'4" or something like that, 7'1". So I love Florida. I always think in March, I think the biggest thing for me is, do you have experienced guards? They check that off. Then can you defend? You're going to need stops against really good offensive teams. They absolutely can defend. Can you shoot? They absolutely can shoot. And then my biggest thing is, do you have versatile depth? One night you're going to play a team that pushes the pace or has a ton of guards, and the next night you're going to play a team that maybe slows it down or plays 2 big men. Florida, because they have so much versatility, they can do all of it. I'm absolutely with you. I honestly think Florida is my national champion right now, if I had to choose one. And that SEC, like you mentioned, is so much fun. But they really have impressed me. They win in a bunch of different ways with a bunch of different guys.
We're talking with Zach Pereles from CBS Sports. Zach, so, I'm glad, DB got his little Florida plug in, because I actually...
I'm not even a Florida guy, but...
I know, but you've been on Florida for a minute here, and you kept asking me, well, we sure Alabama's better than Florida? And and then I texted you this weekend, and I was like, I don't know if Alabama's better than Florida. But, Zach, it's a little funny. Obviously, we're kind of in Big Ten, Big East country over here, which feels weird to say you're in Big East country in Omaha. But how would you describe the strengths of those respective leagues compared to the SEC? Obviously, we know SEC has a ton of really good teams at the top. Seems like the middle class of the Big Ten might be where its strength is. And then I don't totally know what to do with the Big East at this point. How do you kind of line up the strengths of those different conferences?
Oh, man, you're coming with the heavy hitters. So I'm a big guy. I went to school in the Big Ten as well. I still think the SEC, like you mentioned, the top heaviness as well. I still think that maybe second tier is maybe even a little bit somehow underrated because those top teams are so good. Like
an Ole Miss?
Yeah, you mentioned Ole Miss. I'm an Ole Miss. I am in on Ole Miss. I like that they have backcourt experience. And I just cannot get that really impressive win at Alabama out of my head. But even teams like Vanderbilt, that's a team that's beaten a couple top 10 teams this year. Mm-hmm. So I still have the SEC, I think, pretty well ahead. The Big Ten, though, I've been really impressed just with how competitive it is. You look at this, 6 teams with double-digit Big Ten wins. I think that there's a little bit of an upper crust that has separated itself in the SEC. But then the Big Ten, you have 6 teams that I think are right there, can beat either one. And you even talked about, Illinois at 9-7 in the conference. they can get beat or beat anyone on any given night. So I think that's the separator, though, is that upper crust of the SEC is really, really good. And then the good and middling teams in the SEC are also really good. So that's kind of where I see the differentiation there. I don't know if I could pick out a Big Ten team that I'm like, this is a top 5 title contender. And I just think that's the biggest separator. And then you mentioned the Big East. I'm in on St. John's. I get the issues with the shooting, but they're so well coached. They're so tough. And I love that they're experienced in the backcourt as well. That's if a team doesn't check that box, I am not going to get burned by them on my bracket. A little bit disappointed with Marquette this year, just a little more up and down than I wanted them to be or thought that they should be. But I still like that backcourt as well. So I think overall SEC, it just has those separating factors of the top is really good. And then the teams behind that, you can still see some second and third weekend teams there. And I don't think you can say that about anyone else.
All these questions, Zach, full disclosure, are basically how I can put my bracket together, right? So I've touched on shooting. I've touched on pace of play because the other metrics are kind of easy, right? Offensive efficiency, defensive efficiency. I get who wins titles over the last 20 years, right? It's pretty famous. Let me ask you about taking care of the basketball. And I'm going to stay in the Big Ten and I'm going to stay in the Big East. Two teams that have a propensity to turn the ball over a little bit, but will be tough scouts when you have to turn the game around quickly. Michigan, number one, because they initiate offense through a big and can play big on big. And Creighton, because they're so good defensively and they don't foul and they can always shoot it. If you have to look at those two teams, they can get a little loose with the ball. Who's better built, in your opinion, for a longer run?
Oh, man, you guys. Oh, man. I think I'm going to go with Creighton. And the reason why is that we've seen Creighton before. The big thing has been they've got these 5 guys who, can be your 5. And if they all stay out of foul trouble like Creighton does, you can make it work. This year, a little bit more depth. I just fundamentally believe a little bit more in Stephen Ashworth than I do in Michigan's guards.
They just sent Gales to the bench, right? Now he's coming off the bench.
Yeah, it's just I do like Michigan, but you look at they've won I think 4 or 5 in a row by 4 or fewer points. It's you flip a couple of those and just one of those in the tournament and your season's over. So I still really believe in Creighton. You mentioned them, they've had a couple close losses. You flip those to wins, and we're talking about, is Creighton a dark horse for a national championship? I don't think they're quite there yet, but I still believe in their guards a little bit more. Ryan Kalkbrenner and Stephen Ashworth, those two guys are, probably nearing they're still in college, all-American teams. So
I just think they would be a tough scout if you don't play them in the league, how they play.
Yep. And then I've seen, I love steadiness, especially when I'm filling out a bracket. If you stay true to who you are, which Creighton does a really good job of, then I'm going to probably favor you. That's just a personal preference. I'd rather believe in a team that loses doing what they do than a team that loses because they try to do more than they should. But I like kind of the up and downness, the kind of explosiveness that Jemiah Neal brings. He's one of those guys where if I tell a friend, hey, you should tune in and watch this game, and he plays well, he's like, wow, this guy's awesome live. I've not heard of him. But he could easily be a guy who you tune in and he has a bad game, and he's like, what do you see in this guy? There are moments when I feel like I suggest this, and then he misses 3 straight shots, and my friend turns the TV off and says, have you ever watched basketball? But those are the guys that you need in March, because if you have a team with steady guys like Kalkbrenner and Ashworth, then you need some sort of, explosion here, or can someone give you a quick 6-0 run with a couple of buckets? So I'm going to lean Creighton. I just trust their guards a little bit more. And as much as I love Danny Wolf, I don't think that he completely makes up for the distrust I have in some of Michigan's guards.
And he turns the ball over, too.
Zach,
Oh, man.
Zach, as we transition from college basketball, I actually want to talk about another guy that can look really good at times and then make you scratch your head and wonder if you've ever watched anybody play quarterback before when you tell people he's good, and that's Trevor Lawrence. If I had to give you a few guys that are on the market or potentially on the market, in Trevor Lawrence, in Aaron Rodgers, and apparently Matthew Stafford as well.
Which is weird.
If you're, let's say, my partner here is a diehard Steelers fan. So let's say you're the Pittsburgh Steelers and you're evaluating your options with those three guys. Which direction are you going?
Oh, man. So the Steelers are a team that I'd like. I think that I'd probably have to go Matthew Stafford just because he is such a floor raiser, but he still gives you, and I'm sure Steelers fans are tired of how high the floor is because what do they do?
Yes, we are.
But Matthew Stafford, like, he gives you those moments of brilliance, and, like, he can just deliver absolute dots from the pocket, like things crumbling around him. They are the team that gave the Eagles the best shot of any team this postseason. So especially for the Steelers, I would say Matthew Stafford. Like, I think that he still has it. You see little bits of physical fall off in terms of some movement in the pocket sort of things, but the arm is still magical. He can still make every single throw. So for a team like the Steelers that should be wanting to win now, and they're going to have that, I don't even want to say the word high floor. I think you're going to be sick. But I would say he still delivers those moments of really high ceiling, really excellent quarterback play. And in the playoffs, you need a guy who can do that. Matthew Stafford is that guy. You saw it against the Vikings. You saw it in spurts against the Eagles, who, again, dominated everyone else they played. So for the Steelers, I'm picking Matthew Stafford because he just fits. And unlike the guys that they've had the last few years, the ceiling still raises.
Are there some teams out there? First of all, let me finish on Stafford real quick. Given where the Rams are with their roster, and I get the years left or few years left on Stafford's deal, you think it was intentional, or why would you float Stafford now and make him potentially available, given how that roster is constructed?
Yeah, that's a question that I struggle with myself. Like, I came away from this season impressed with the Rams. Like, they transitioned from this all-in Super Bowl team a few years ago to, they went from F them picks to we cherish our picks, and we literally rebuilt our entire defense with picks. So I really struggle with this one. My only thought is that they internally are like, hey, like, we either need to go back to cherishing the draft because maybe Stafford isn't Super Bowl level right now, but I wish that I could see them ride it out one more. And I think Cooper Kupp probably, like, that is probably the right move considering the money, and they're going to have to work out whatever deal they make with him. But yeah, I really have trouble envisioning Matthew Stafford not being on the Rams next year, and I have trouble envisioning the Rams not being pretty good next year. Even without Cooper Kupp, like, Puka Nacua is, absolutely a dog, like, number one wide receiver. And I think that one more year of Matthew Stafford, you can still move on after that with a really solid young core on defense and Puka and Tyron Williams on offense. So I still think one more year of Matthew Stafford in LA, and they can still make some noise because I just came away wanting to see that core one more time.
If you're going to have some cap space to work with, would you rather be the Chargers or the Cardinals?
Ooh, Chargers. I don't think that it's close. I think that I
was kind of thinking about division.
Yeah, I just think that at the end of the day, Kyler Murray, like, you see the flashes and you still see some really good stuff. I just don't get there like I do with Justin Herbert. I think Justin is a guy that you can build around for another decade. And I think that the culture is so overused. I cover the Commanders here, and you hear guys talk about culture all the time and how it's improved. But I think you saw teams like the Commanders and the Chargers with those first-year coaches actually instill it and actually live by that culture. So that's one thing that I just think, like, Justin Herbert, I like his leadership more. I like his game more. And I just like everything that's kind of headed in that direction more. You look at, this is a team that made the playoffs in a year where they were supposed to be completely rebuilding and supposed to be kind of eating their vegetables when it comes to some older guys maybe aging out. Instead, they made the playoffs. The Cardinals, you were thinking, hey, showed some flashes a couple of years ago. Maybe this is the year that they, make that jump, and they didn't. So I just like the trajectory more. I like kind of the momentum in the building more. So I think I'm Chargers here, and I'm interested to see what they can do. A lot of people say, where's the help for Justin Herbert? They obviously need to invest in that. I want to continue to see them invest in that defense as well, because down the stretch you started to see some of the struggles.
That's Zach Pereles from CBS Sports. Zach, we appreciate the time, and let's catch up again soon.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me.
More Hurrdat Sports
Zach.
Live coming up next.
You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Live.
Welcome back. Hurrdat Sports Live. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here on the Pillar Exterior stage. It's time for Bet On It, brought to you by Warhorse Sportsbook, the best place in Nebraska to place your sports bets. Make sure you get to the casino in Lincoln or in Omaha and see everything they've got to offer. DB, you brought up some interesting questions there with Zach, kind of regarding the NFL and how teams are proceeding this offseason, right? So the Rams are really interesting because when
look what just happened.
They're talking about Cooper Kupp over on ESPN.
I just don't understand why I don't
understand why you'd move on from Stafford.
What happened?
I mean, I do. It's money, right? It's a $17 million difference in cap.
They're not in terrible shape, though.
Yeah. Unless they know something about him that none of the rest of us know about health or ability or whatever. I was shocked when it seemed like they were floating his availability to anyone, right? Not as shocked, but to hear about Trevor Lawrence, that one makes sense for the Jaguars. For what his money is and where they're at, it makes sense that he might be more valuable to somebody else.
If they just would have waited a year. Like, they had time.
That's, again, why are we paying these guys early?
They had time.
You know, whether it's him, whether it's Jordan Love, although Jordan Love's been better, so like that seems like it's going to justify itself. But if you've got time, just wait. Just wait on it, right? Like, we've seen a ton of guys have these flashes where you go, oh man, that guy might be really good. You know, like Matt Castle looked like a dude for a year, right? We've seen guys have these stretches where we just don't really know. At one point, it looked like Colin Kaepernick could have had the career trajectory that Jordan Love did.
The guy played in the Super Bowl.
Yes, and almost won.
And had an incredible year.
And almost won,
No,
right? Like, so I'm sitting here and I go, okay, why are we paying these guys?
And he's in your outlier group.
Yes, in terms of guys that made Super Bowls. Yeah, and so I'm sitting here and I go, okay, why are we paying these guys early? So it makes sense why Trevor Lawrence is on the block. I don't totally understand because Matthew Stafford's number for a quarterback at his level is not bad. It is not crazy.
So, and maybe I hear what I want to hear. Now, Zach wasn't taking a shot because we're talking franchises here.
Mm-hmm.
And Arizona historically has not given you a ton to be like, oh, they're moving in the right direction fiscally, or they have a plan.
Yeah.
But I still am surprised at how dismissive people are of Kyler Murray. And I don't know why. Because he doesn't really fit my eye.
Yeah.
Of what I would gravitate towards too, but his numbers are pretty good. He wins a fair amount, and he doesn't have a ton.
No, he's had to do most of it by himself.
He doesn't have a ton. And they have money.
The Cardinals?
Now, conversely, the guy that is the biggest or the toughest land the plane guy is Herbert. Yeah. I still don't know. Like, you talk about track record.
I don't know.
Herbert hasn't won anything.
I don't know what to do with that.
But
guy.
I get the fact if you want to build around him for 10 years, I'm not mad at you either.
No, I get it. I see it, right? You watch him and you go, oh, that makes sense. But at some point, I need him to win more than he does.
And they have some money to spend.
The Cardinals?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so did the Chargers.
So I'm trying to compare. I'm real time here trying to compare Justin Herbert and Kyler Murray.
And how did the Commanders only have $8 million dead cap money?
Yeah, the Commanders are super interesting.
They're too. You need a lineman, but you got to get better on defense.
You know, okay.
You got to get better on defense.
So Justin Herbert and Kyler Murray have started 79 and 82 games respectively. So very close.
Are you going to strengthen my argument?
I think so.
Okay.
What would you guess?
I'm going to lose my mind.
So Kyler Murray, 82 games started.
Yeah.
What would you guess his record as a starter is?
Ooh. That I will go 82 games.
Mm-hmm.
I'll go 37 and 45.
Did you look at this?
How would I know?
36, 45, and 1. That's so dumb.
How would I know?
I don't know. And I know you didn't read off my screen because you're blind. So.
And I can't read that
and
angle.
it's at the angle. 36, 45, and 1. So you were a tie away from having it dead.
What's that win percentage?
I'll do the math here. But Justin Herbert, 79 games. What's his record?
He's got a 5-win season in there, I think. 79 games, so I have to make the math work. I will go
79 starts. No ties. I'll give you a hint. No ties.
I will go 33-46.
So he's a little better than that. He's 41-38.
Oh, he has a winning record.
He does.
Oh, good for him.
He's just over 500. My point is,
good for him. I would not have guessed that.
We're talking about a 3-game flip difference between these two guys.
I know. They're
thought of dramatically differently. Dramatically differently. Justin Herbert has a 6-win season and a 5-win season, as you mentioned. Kyler Murray has a 5-win season. And he's got a couple half seasons in there where he was injured, a 3-8 and a 3-5.
And that guy had not the best. He had Cliff Kingsbury.
Herbert's had better coaches, better players, better team in general around him. We look at the Cardinals as a largely dysfunctional franchise, right? We don't necessarily look at the Chargers that way. Not terribly well run, but we don't look at them as dysfunctional. People liked Staley for a while.
Wasn't that interesting?
No one's really ever liked Kingsbury. And yet, we are talking about you flip 3 games, essentially, 4 games, and these are dead on. These are
exactly
identical guys. And obviously, I've never been a huge Kyler guy. I think it's
no one is.
Right.
Which kind of what has always bugged me.
Who do you think has a higher completion percentage?
Murray.
Murray does by about half a point or about a half a percentage. 66.5 to 67.1.
Who's turned the ball over more?
Ooh, let's see here. Career interceptions, 57 for Murray.
Oh.
45 for Herbert.
So about 3 more a year.
Herbert would have been on pace. He only had 3 this year. So Herbert's numbers came all the way down.
So he caught it. That's where
he basically caught up.
Yeah.
Right. I do want to look at fumbles real quick from our guy Justin Herbert here.
And I like Herbert.
You like him more than I do, I think.
It's just we give a lot of these guys it's just the narrative.
Yeah, the narrative of who these guys are is dramatically different. And I think the larger point is probably, you think Kyler Murray's gettable? Like, you think somebody could go get Kyler Murray if they really wanted
he got the big deal. Isn't he at like 245?
He's 46 a year. I think he was one of my 46 a year guys. So I don't know if you want to go get him number-wise. But if that's the type of commitment you're looking at for a quarterback, in a couple of years, 45 is going to be a middle-class quarterback number. We're kind of getting there already. Are you betting on Justin Herbert or Kyler Murray if you're trying to steal a quarterback from somebody?
Probably Herbert. And if they stay status quo with their coaches, I like Harbaugh with Herbert better.
Let's say if you're a third team, though, and you're going to go –
I think it's worth a better look than we talk.
Probably.
Right.
Do you have any picks you like tonight?
Baylor.
I
like Baylor on the old money line.
You like the Bears on the money line?
Mm-hmm. Take Baylor.
There you go. Let's bet on it.
I don't know what their saying is, but
sick 'em.
Sick 'em.
Sick 'em Bears.
Yeah, sick 'em tonight.
That's bet on it. Brought to you by World-Herald Sportsbook. More Hurrdat Sports Live coming up next.
be back. We will be back. We will be back.
You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Live.
On football now through the week and looking forward to being with you in the booth. The hardest thing for me on game days isn't the prep or any of that. It's keeping you and Cootie on the same page. We'll have Damon on Sports Island, and I work. Jessica, be nice. She goes, well, he'll start something.
No,
Greg,
no, I never do.
I'll have to go. I'm going, Jessica, you need to be nice.
Wrapping up the show here on Hurrdat Sports Live. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. And you wonder why I thought he was like your guys' dad. Just, hey, you two get along.
I'm going to be on with her tomorrow night.
Yeah, Jess?
Yes. I think she'll be nice.
You think so?
I think so. I think so. I haven't.
Is she the older sister?
No.
Not like actual age-wise, but I mean relationship.
No. So we're good at different things.
Okay.
Jess knows where to be, when to be there, and so she can put the ideas in my head. I'm the one, I think, that kind of will make it happen.
Okay. So I think that's what gave me the older sister vibe.
Because I'll always have to ask her, hey, what time?
Where are we going?
Where are we
what
going?
Time?
Yeah, I never know any of that.
So that's, I think, what gave me the vibe.
No, that's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Because that's what I would ask of my older sister. I'd be like, wait, where are we supposed to be? What are we supposed to do?
And she'll tell me something like 8 or 9 days in advance.
And then you're going to have to ask again day
Which
up.
for me, you reach a point of diminishing returns. I'm probably somewhere between, give me 4 or 5.
I was going to say 2 or 3.
Like if
somewhere
especially if I already have to be there.
Yeah.
Like it's fine. Now,
like if it's a matter of you're going to be,
I'll
both,
be there anyway.
Yeah, you're both going to be in Minnesota
or wherever.
You're just trying to get specific as opposed to, hey, DB, we need to get you to this place.
Right.
That's a different story.
Like I can't remember. I'm somewhere this weekend and it's far,
and I needed to know well in advance.
Sure. Yeah. But that's not already going to be their deal.
No.
Yeah.
And I found out the actual details, like the details,
yeah,
on Twitter. Like a guy, he's like, "Hey, you're going to be like 15 minutes away from me."
You're like, "Am I?"
But I knew it. I knew it was Saturday. And I didn't know who I was going to. I just knew I was with Sty.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much the extent of it.
Yeah.
But now I know the details. I had to blow up the flyer on
on your phone. Just
I did. I was like, okay, 4:30 to 7:30. I got it.
This is what we're doing.
Yeah.
All right.
And I just saw Sty at Calvin's funeral, but that wasn't near the time or the place to shore up
You'd be like,
work
"Hey,
details.
Yeah, can I get the itinerary there?"
Yeah.
What? Where is he? Is he still around town?
Sty?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's still working for the university. He's
okay.
Yeah, I see him. So about every 2 or 3 trips, he'll have some huge donors on the plane.
Sure.
So he still does good work.
Those are Sty's guys.
Yeah. Yeah. I just like to see him have to get on those planes.
It's a little tight squeeze.
Well, it's not often he's going to be like a regular sized guy, but with some of those linemen, he looks like a regular sized guy, even though he's a monster.
It is kind of, I think about this sometimes, and Sty's from around here, right?
No, he's from Yorba Linda, California.
Oh, okay. I thought he was one of the guys that was around. So he's a really good example of this. It is really kind of funny to me how many of the guys that either played with you or after that have stuck around.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't have a lot of other frame of reference for it, but it seems unusual.
I thought it catches me off guard.
Because a lot of these guys are not from here,
Yeah.
and they just stick around.
I think it speaks to the warmth of the state.
I agree.
It's very inviting. Kind of like what we were saying about G Sharp. He won over the people
quickly,
yeah. Being from someplace else. And it's not like he didn't have the benefit of just being part of something good or dominant.
No, it was tough when he came in.
It was tough.
Yeah.
He had to seriously weather the storm.
Because he came in halfway through.
Look at the baseball
Callahan's
coaches
last year, right?
Look at the baseball coaches.
Yeah.
That wasn't easy either.
Yeah, it wasn't all rainbow and butterflies.
On the heels of playing in a CWS.
Yeah, just a couple years before that, right? It wasn't nearly as long ago when he started as it seems now.
That's why I'm saying, and sometimes we can be hard on those people because everything else is bad, and negative. So you do the association.
Mm-hmm.
I never had that problem.
Yeah, that is one of the things that I find most unusual is how beloved he is, considering he didn't really preside over a great time.
And
for either program,
and
really.
the other thing.
What's that?
He never had to be out in front. He never had to be out in front.
What do you mean?
He didn't introduce his presence.
Oh, it didn't need to be about him.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay.
And he never had the mic. It's just for a guy that made a living behind the mic.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't have to have it in front of his face for you to be drawn to him.
Yeah. That is a unique skill.
I'm just telling, walk through it in your. Believe me, I spent fair enough time. Walk through it in your head about the power and the magnitude of what he was able to accomplish to impact people's lives, speaking to them indirectly.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's again, wasn't didn't get the benefit from a feel good. Everybody was all in. Hey, welcome to the family. We're having no, it was tough.
Yeah. It wasn't during the, paradise portion of the programs.
I have a one other clip I'd like to play.
What do you got?
That I clipped out from when he was on the show.
I looked at DB at halftime. I go, wait a minute, Ramir hasn't had a carry yet tonight. What's
you
going on? And then we're like, Jess, check on Ramir, and then she's like, he's in street clothes. We're like, what the heck? Did he just take the night off? And they go, oh, we're good, Ramir. We got this. Go out and get your runs and come on back and enjoy the second half.
That's funny.
That was really funny.
And the funny thing about that is I go back and listen to what was going on with Ramir, and I knew he had gotten kind of dinged, and then he missed a couple of games, but we didn't really know what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go back and you hear the story of what had happened with his mom. And I wondered if just emotionally he just wasn't ready to.
Yeah, wasn't ready to go.
Yeah, just a lot. There's a lot of that cool stuff.
It's kind of funny. I think there's some similarities in the way I think about Greg and the way I think about Coach Rule, right? In the sense that when Coach Rule got hired, one of the things I kept talking about was he feels like one of us, even though he's not from here.
Mm-hmm.
That, I think, was the big thing with Greg. He felt like a Nebraskan, even though he wasn't born and raised here, didn't have that. And again, you mentioned the impacting people without talking to them directly. That's another thing that Coach Rule does. He
was outstanding at the Broyles Award.
Really outstanding at the Broyles Award. And then I don't think the whole interview is dropped yet, but he did an interview with Josh Pate.
Oh, yeah.
Where I saw a clip of it last night, and I wrote this down. And
Pate's a guy that can get that. He's a fan.
Yeah.
So
I don't always love him, but I'll watch. I think it's like an hour long is what was teased. But one of the things that he said, and I'm sure we'll get into it a ton tomorrow because I think it drops today, is most people give up on the dream. The dream never gives up on you. He was talking about, hey, how do you get these guys to keep pushing when the success hasn't come yet?
Mm-hmm.
And Josh, I thought, asked a really good question. He goes, like, you're improving like incrementally. How do you keep guys dialed to do the really hard things? And Coach Rule's talked about, well, I mean, listen, we started behind. We started behind Ohio State. So we can't just do what Ohio State does, because then we're always going to be behind and just hope that they stub their toe. He's like, we've got to do things to catch up. And it's really hard when you're doing all this hard stuff and you end up with basically the same results that you had before. And that's when he said, most people give up on the dream. The dream doesn't give up on you. It's that point where you just have to keep pushing through, where it doesn't seem like it's made any difference right before you end up. I mean, what's the old saying, right? It's like so many people give up right before they're about to succeed, like, and they have no idea how close they were. I think that's what he's saying there. But if the rest of the interview is anything like that, I'm on the edge of my seat waiting for that one to come down.
Yeah, he was checking on me Friday and again into Saturday morning, and I didn't even know he was at the Broyles Award, which is, again, speaks volumes, right? That's just what kind of he's just.
He's at this big important thing, and
he's a good dude.
Checking in on.
And I'm giving him a hard time.
Yeah.
Right. I'm like, hey, glad Julie could write that speech for you. And that was. Good on her for taking good care of you. I said, nice job on the Broyles Award. And he said, the very first thing he said, and I had said a couple of things before that, the very first thing he said was, man, that was off the riff. He's just a cool dude. He was like, just seeing Coach Broyles, and his daughters and his granddaughter, he said it made him grateful. So his feeling of gratitude was what led into the speech. Absolute true story. His feeling of gratitude.
Yeah.
Just, because it's not like I think my buddy Aaron said it the best. When he's talking like that, he's not stumbling around searching for words.
No. And he's not reading.
Clearly.
Right?
Yeah.
Obviously. He's not reading.
Yeah.
He's not searching for it. That's one of the things, and we've talked about this about him and with him before, is the breadth of things he can talk about off the cuff without prep.
Yeah, his ability to draw on experience. And he said that moment, and he's speaking to my heart, because I don't write. I kind of like to just whatever's in there is in there, right? And he said, it was the emotion of how he felt that directed him on what to talk about. That's how he got into family and high school coaching, and how hard it is.
Yeah.
About it's just from being grateful for the opportunities that he had, and how he gets to spend time with his family still doing the little things.
And you know why that impressed me so much? Because you can't do that unless you've spent a lot of time thinking about it.
Yeah.
Obviously, these are things that really matter to him.
100%.
That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. Hope you enjoyed the first day of our full digital experience. Whatever kinks we've got, we'll get them ironed out along the way. Hang in there with us. We appreciate you. We'll be back tomorrow.
see you. Have a good day. Love you.